All right, and welcome back to the forecast card. Another 4-4 day. A couple bad beats, a couple solid games, a couple lucky games. Can't really complain too much. St. Bonaventure, the lock of the day, comes through with a pretty insane. I think it was like a 13-0 run to end the game off, winning this game by 5 points after being down 8 with like 3 or 4 minutes left. Thought that one was cooked, but I really loved the spot for them, and the full court press really made them uncomfortable, and they really locked in and got that win over the Dukes. Ole Miss game ends up hooking. They end up walking off a 3. Obviously, we had 3.5. Hopefully, some of you had -3. I think I saw it on a couple books in the morning. But yeah, they just imploded so much in the second half. They went from like up 12 to up 15 to like down 8, and then they came all the way back just to fortunately make a 3. I think we had a chance in overtime maybe, but it is what it is. St. Louis, a little bit shaky at times, but they come through. End up winning that game by 8. Really solid performance, especially from Jimerson and Swope, both of them dropping over 25 points. You love to see it. Wake Forest, pretty much, I would say it's a pretty bad beat. The game was tied with 3 minutes left. They just completely imploded in the final 3 minutes. End up losing this game by 9. Sucks when you have points when the game's that close. The entire game, they just stopped being able to make points. Salas tried his best, but the rest of the team did absolutely nothing. RJ Davis just ended up being the better guard today, unfortunately, especially when times got rough at the beginning, or at the end rather. But it is what it is. Colorado, relatively sweat-free. They kept that game back and forth. There was times when it felt like they were letting the game slip away from them a little bit, but Houston really wasn't trying that hard. It seemed like they were kind of just chilling, especially once they were up double digits. They rested starters, so they ended up losing that game by like I think 9 points, so pretty sweat-free. The under, this was in the Kennesaw game. This was just a ref game, man. Like I think there was like 60 free throws total that game. Both teams shot like 40% from 3. Just read the game completely wrong. I really thought the threes were not going to be falling because both teams can defend the 3 well, but it didn't seem to matter. The teams were playing at a much faster pace than I'm used to. I think it ends at like 158, so 21 over my under. So terrible bet by me. It is what it is. Luckily, we get it back with the Miz over. That game was a little bit sweaty near the end. These teams shot a combined, like I think it was 14 for 55 from 3. We still got the over, so I think this was definitely the right side to be on, even though if we got lucky at the very end of the game. Yeah, this was insane that these two teams just could not hit their threes, especially after getting shit on the under because the other teams just could not miss from 3. And UTSA, we end off the night on a disgusting backdoor. There's like 5 seconds left. UTSA is down 3, shooting free throws. They missed the first one, and it's a 1-and-1. So the other team gets the ball back, and for some reason decides to run it all the way for a slam dunk, and they end up winning by 5. Super sad. Not much to say. The thing that was crazy with me is this UTSA team. Like they're the number 1 team in college basketball in forcing steals, and they did not get a single steal in the first half. Like they got 1 steal at the very end with like 1 second left, and it didn't matter because they couldn't get possession. I don't know. So the stats just didn't show up for me that game. They also shot 50% from the free throw line. I think there's so many ways we easily could have covered this game, but for starters, is they should have dominated forcing steals. I don't know how that happened, but it is what it is. 4-4 on the day. Luckily, the lock comes through, bringing our locks to 16-6. Pretty hot streak for the locks, honestly. The lock for today is actually going to be an over. I just really like the situational spot, even though I don't necessarily have it modeled as a too high scoring game. I feel like it just makes too much sense to not take it. So let's get into the 10 games that I'm betting for tomorrow. I like quite a lot. A lot of it was model spots. I think I have 4 games where I just had it modeled much closer than it was, what the line was. It's mostly all underdogs and a couple situational spots, and then 4 spots of just normal handicapping. So yeah, let's get into the 10 games that I like for tomorrow. All right, heading on to game number 1, we have Wisconsin versus UCLA. I really love this spot here for Wisconsin. I think UCLA on paper has been the better team this year, especially with how their defense kind of plays out. But I think Wisconsin matches up decently well against them. On paper, I do think Wisconsin's a slightly better team. UCLA has played really well at home, but they haven't been nearly as good of a team on the road or on a neutral setting. Wisconsin's been playing much better in both of the conference tournaments this year on the road. Getting Wisconsin with one game under their belt already, familiar with the stadium, with the crowd. I think UCLA is going to have to warm up a bit, especially the way they play. I think they're going to come out a little bit cold. And we're getting the Wisconsin here in a really good revenge spot. These two teams played already earlier in the year, where UCLA won an extremely tight game at home by 2 points. Again, UCLA is much worse on the road, so we're getting a really tight game last time they played, and now we're getting UCLA on the road in a neutral setting, but still on the road. In terms of how these teams kind of perform against elite teams, Wisconsin plays really, they play well against top 25 teams, while UCLA against top 50 teams hasn't really overperformed. Most of their games are extremely close, and they kind of rely on some awkward shots to win. But when I dig into the matchup here, Wisconsin, they played a significantly harder schedule this year. So I do think their stats kind of prove to be more beneficial. They're still the best free throw shooting team in the college basketball. They shoot at an 85% clip, which is just insane. UCLA cannot shoot their free throws. They shoot it right 255th. Sorry. If it ever comes down to free throw shooting, I think Wisconsin is going to be able to clutch it up in the end in the end of games, where UCLA is really going to struggle. 15% difference in free throws is going to be a big deal against two teams that shoot a lot of free throws. Again, if you dig into kind of where Wisconsin likes to score, they're a team that likes to shoot threes and in the paint. UCLA really struggles at defending the paint. They're ranked 176 in near paint percentage given up. Wisconsin's a top 40 team in the paint. Wisconsin's going to find some success from three like they did last time they played. I think they scored like 15 threes in that game. So despite the fact that UCLA does have a decent three-point defense, clearly it doesn't really matter much. And on the other side, if you look at how UCLA likes to score, they like to shoot a lot of mid-range shots, more than most teams, shooting over 30% from mid-range. It's a Wisconsin team that's basically a top 10 mid-range defense. UCLA might find some success in the paint and three-point, but they don't take that many shots from there. And they really heavily rely on getting points off steals and offensive boards. Wisconsin top 7 in limiting second chance opportunities and top 25 in limiting points off steals. So I think we're getting Wisconsin, the better free throw shooting team, in a revenge spot. Already has one game under their belt. I think they get the revenge here and beat UCLA outright. So give me Wisconsin money line as game number 1. All right, heading out to game number 2, we have BYU versus Houston. Obviously, Houston is the way better team. Best defense in college basketball, top 10 offense. But this BYU team, they're still a top 10 offense as well, and they've been scoring against some solid defenses, putting up 96 against Arizona, 91 against Kansas, 96 against Iowa State. Like, they don't really seem to give a shit about how good your defense is. And they're going to find a way. This team is on a mission. Obviously, both these teams are just coming off one game in the bubble already, in their in-conference tournament. So they're both going to be kind of familiar with the environment. But Houston, coming off not very impressive game, only beating Colorado by 9 points as 16-point or 18-point favorites. They haven't really blown out any team by more than 10 points in a very long time, since like mid-February. BYU's they've just been good, man. In terms of power ratings, they've been a top 10 team in the last 5. So obviously Houston's still being an elite team, especially on the road. But man, I don't know. This BYU team, they've got something going for them. And I think they're just going to come into this game way more motivated. The shot they take the most of is the three. Almost 50% of their shots come from three. That's the spot that Houston defends the worst. They're top 2 mid-range defense, top 2 basket defense, but 27th in three-point defense. So I think BYU will find some success there. They're still an elite team in shooting the ball in the mid-range and near basket. If Colorado can find success against Houston's defense, so can BYU. I think they're going to drop another 90-point game. BYU, obviously, they don't really go for offensive boards or force turnovers. So the fact that Houston's good at that doesn't really mean much for BYU success lately. And this is going to be a pretty slow-paced game. So catching points here, if BYU can keep this game close enough just by hitting their threes and doing what they do best, which is not really turning the ball over, not letting Houston get free points at the free throw line, not not giving them offensive boards. I think Houston has the possibility here to not be able to shoot too well if BYU is playing with the energy they've been playing. Yeah, on that page, I think BYU will find some success from three and just in general. I think will find some success shooting the ball. And Houston, they're also going to find success, but they shoot a lot of mid-range shots, which is the shot that they aren't that good at. They shoot almost everything at like 33%, but they shoot mostly mid-range, and they're good at it, and that's what BYU defends the worst. But BYU's top 6 in limiting second chance opportunities. If Houston isn't able to make their shots that they usually do, they're really going to struggle here. When I watched that Colorado game, obviously they were not trying that hard. They knew they would win no matter what, but I think BYU in this revenge spot, playing as well as they are, Houston due for a ton of negative regression. Despite how well BYU's playing, they're still due for positive regression. The record should be 24-7. Houston's record should be 23-8. We're catching 7.5 points here. Obviously, Houston's advanced stats say one thing, but I think this BYU team is way more motivated to win this tournament, especially if they have ability to move up to like a 4 or a 3 seed. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that they're going with Houston. Has already locked up the 1 seed, but again, it could be very wrong. But 28-4 in the regular season, I think locks up the 1 seed. But Bama does have the head-to-head, so maybe I could be wrong. But yeah, I really like BYU here. I think they'll find success against a Houston team that just seems to be kind of coasting until they hopefully make it all the way to the Sweet 16. So yeah, give me BYU here plus 7.5. All right, heading on to game number 3, we have Tulsa versus North Texas. I think North Texas shows up for this game. They basically need to win this tournament to have any chance of making the big tournament. I don't think they want to go to the NIT, even though it's realistic. They're basically sitting at a 25% chance currently in terms of bracketology to make the big tournament, and I think they're going to be up for it. This is a Tulsa team that has one very concerning stat, which makes me want to take North Texas today, and that stat is that this Tulsa team, with a rest disadvantage, is 0-10 against the spread this year. North Texas is 5-2 against the spread with a rest advantage. North Texas has had 4 or 5 days off. Tulsa is going to be playing back-to-back games. These two teams recently played. Tulsa got blown out by 19 points. I think North Texas, again, they're not going to stop. They're going to be super high energy for this game and this entire tournament. Tulsa's probably going to be a bit gassed. Clearly, when they don't get a lot of rest, they struggle. And North Texas is a really annoying team to play against if you're tired. They will force you to turn the ball over, and they'll do it over and over again. I only have this model. It's a 12-point win for North Texas, but when I add in motivation, quality of teams, whatever, I think this is still a spot where North Texas can find a lot of success. North Texas, they're a team that likes to shoot, a lot of mid-range shots. They shoot everything around 30%. Tulsa's not a bad defensive team by any stretch, but they're definitely not an elite team defensively, and I think North Texas, especially with the rest advantage, will find success. Tulsa really bad on their own boards. North Texas is going to find some success there. Texas, really good free throw shooting team. I think they're going to get to the line quite a lot this game. They play really slowly, which is kind of my only scare of this spread. But I think they'll find success. On the other side of the ball, Tulsa, very similar. They shoot everything around 30%. North Texas is a very elite defense everywhere except for in the paint. But if you're a tired team, they typically shoot a lot of threes, mid-range shots. It's going to be tough to get into the paint against this North Texas team, who's really good on their own boards. They don't turn the ball over a lot. Yeah, I think this is a North Texas spot for sure. If you look at how these two teams play on neutral courts, on paper, obviously North Texas hasn't played since the early on tournament, but they are one of the better neutral court teams. They beat Northern Iowa, kept it really close against a Utah State team that's way better than them in their 2 neutral court games this year. Tulsa, they went 2-1 in their neutral games before. Obviously, they just had a nice win over Temple. But if I'm being honest, Temple kind of threw that game away. But Tulsa had to work really hard to win that game, genuinely. North Texas coming off a pretty bad loss to Temple to end off their season. But I think they show up for this game. I think they know they're better than Tulsa. And that stat really just jumps out to me. I think they want to make the tournament this year, and they have the roster and the coach to do so. Give me North Texas to blow out Tulsa by 20 points. All right, and that brings us to our lock of the day. Now, When I look at this game, I really only have it as modeled as 149 points. So like I still do like the over, but not typically a spot where I bet it. But when I just look at how these two teams match up, we have Purdue, one of the best offenses in college basketball. They're top three in mid range, near basket, and 3-point percentage. They're going to find some success in forcing turnovers. They're going to have success on the offensive boards, and they're not really a good free throw shooting team. So I kind of like that Michigan doesn't really foul that much. But Purdue, they're going to get their points. They play at a slower pace, but I think they typically pick it up a lot more in these tournaments. I wouldn't necessarily say they had an insane offensive performance last game, only putting 76 points up. There's still a team that has put up 90 points like multiple times this year, putting up 91 last time they already played Michigan. Clearly, they're going to find some success. Michigan has been kind of struggling all year, especially as it kind of ends off their season, only putting up 65, 62, 73, 40, 49, 62 points in like their last 6 games. But this is a Michigan team with 2 7-footers, and this is a Purdue team that cannot defend the paint. Michigan, top 75 in near basket percentage, top 15 in mid-range percentage. They don't really shoot really that many threes, and I don't think they're going to need to this game. I think they're going to dominate the paint against a Purdue team ranked 346th in paint defense. Purdue ranked 150th in offensive boards. I think Michigan's strat this game is going to be they're a fast-paced team. They're just going to be running up the court with their big men, doing pick and rolls, again, getting free buckets constantly. And then Purdue's going to kind of walk up and do what they do offensively with all the weapons they have. I think 146 is way too low. I think these teams both have ways to score this game. I think Purdue's going to pick up their pace a little bit, especially if Michigan keeps getting a bunch of free points. I really do love this spot here. I think both teams are gonna find a lot of success offensively, and both teams not nearly as good defensively as they are offensively. So, can we Purdue versus Michigan over 146.5? You can get this line on FanDuel. I think it's 147.5 everywhere else. I still like it, but if you have FanDuel, 1 point ends up sometimes being a lot. So, that's my favorite play of the day. All right, and that brings us to game number 5, which is Creighton versus UConn. Now, UConn just came off a really impressive game, and Creighton came off a kind of pathetic game. And whenever I look at that, I think this Creighton team is going to be watching the shit out of that tape. DePaul is not a team that they should really be struggling with. They should have lost that game outright, but they battled back, went to 2 OT, which is a big reason why people are probably not going to take Creighton here, because they are coming off a double OT game on a back-to-back. But on paper here, I do think this Creighton team matches up really well against this UConn team. If you look at where Creighton likes to shoot, they shoot a ton of threes. UConn, they defend the mid-range and near basket well, but they don't defend the 3 that well. They're ranked 118th in 3-point defense. Creighton, they're probably, they don't really get to the line that often, but UConn fouls a lot, and Creighton is a really good 3-point shooting team, or free throw shooting team. So I think they're going to find some success there. I think it's going to be probably a pretty low-scoring game. UConn, yes, they defend the paint well, but still, this is still a Creighton team that's top 2 in near basket percentage, top 25 mid-range. I think they're going to be able to find success scoring on this UConn team. On the other side, UConn, they shoot a lot of 3-point shots and near basket shots. Creighton, top 10 near basket defense, top 50 3-point defense. UConn also is a team that relies heavily on getting points off offensive glass. This is a Creighton team ranked top 25 in minimizing second chance opportunity percentage. UConn, an elite free throw shooting team, almost 80%. Creighton's ranked number 1 in college basketball in limiting free throws. So I think Creighton has the ability to keep this game close. I think it's going to be a really low-scoring affair. I think UConn might find success. Obviously, they have a lot of momentum here. But Creighton, I think they're going to be super embarrassed after their last game performance. Obviously, there is some fear that they're going to be tired for this game. But I don't know. I think they're going to show up for it. I think they're familiar with the court now. They got the first game jitters out of the way. They almost kind of just lost to DePaul. I think they're going to be playing as if they already lost, like mentally. And that's got a lot of momentum. I think that's going to make them ride the wave here. UConn coming off a pretty dominant win. They're not even phased, so they haven't really experienced that close call yet. They just crushed Villanova by almost 20 points. But yeah, situational trend wise, this is a Creighton team that off of no rest. UConn is 0-2 against the spread. Creighton's on a push. With equal rest, UConn is 5-8 against the spread. Creighton is 7-2. Obviously Creighton hasn't been good on the neutral side. They're 0-3 against the spread on neutrals. UConn really hasn't been that great either. And Creighton is 6-0-1 against ranked teams this year. Obviously, this is technically a UConn team that has fallen outside of the ranking this year. But I still think in the tournament they kind of play like that level of team. And mentally, when you're playing, the back-to-back champs, you're going to be playing them as if they're a top 25 team either way. I think Creighton shows up for this game. I think they have a chance to win it outright. But I think there's a good chance they keep this game extremely close. Creighton is a team that's due for quite a lot of negative regression. Same for UConn. But I think Creighton is going to be playing a much different energy. I think this line's telling us something. Give me Creighton +4. All right, heading into our last 5 games that I like for today. Starting off, I'm going to take Texas first half +6. I think this team has been elite, and this Tennessee team has a bad habit of starting games out extremely slow. At half they were tied against South Carolina, a team that I think is much, much worse than this Texas team. Texas, they're playing for everything. Tennessee already made the tournament, locked in. Texas needs to continue to do well in this tournament, probably win this game against Tennessee to have any chance to make it. So I think they're going to be playing with a lot more urgency, which is why I'm going to take them in the first half. I think Tennessee is going to come out kind of slow like they always do. Haven't played for 5 days. Texas is already familiar with this court. I think there's going to be more Texas fans here than Tennessee fans, just given how much more important this game is for Texas. When these two teams did play earlier on in the year, it was only a 4-point win for Tennessee. At half and full game, they only outscored Texas by 2 points, and that was when Tennessee was, that was after Tennessee just had an embarrassing loss against Florida. So now we're getting Texas in the revenge spot, just coming off 2 solid wins against Texas A&M and Vanderbilt. Could argue they may be a little bit tired, which is why I'm only taking the first half. I think if Tennessee does start playing them hard in the second half, they're gonna maybe start burning out a little bit. But I think on paper Texas doesn't match up too poorly against them. If you look at how this Tennessee team likes to score, they typically like to shoot threes in near basket. Texas top 10 near basket defense, pretty decent 3-point defense. They don't give you a lot of points off turnovers. And if you look at the other side, this is a Texas team that shoots quite a lot of mid-range shots. They shoot kind of everything around 30%, but mid-range is the thing that Tennessee fails to defend well. I think if Texas plays with enough energy and with how much more consistent they are, they're top 25 in consistency. Tennessee is ranked 350th in consistency, so you never really know what you're going to get with Tennessee, but I think this game means way more for Texas. And I think the fact that Tennessee hasn't played in 5 days means Texas is going to come out hot, kind of similar to the Wake Forest game that we saw against UNC, where they kind of came out hot and then kind of got shit on in the second half. I think we're going to see something similar. So maybe Texas first half +6, Marquette +4.5. Again, I hate betting Marquette, but this is a model spot. I almost had this game modeled as a pick'em. Obviously, St. John's is the better team. I think the public's going to be all over them, so maybe you could wait on this spot. But again, this is a St. John's team. This is like an immediate revenge spot after St. John's just kind of embarrassed them. Again, St. John's is a team that relies heavily on offensive boards. This is still a Marquette team that's pretty good on their own glass. They don't turn the ball over. They're a solid defense, mid-range, near basket, everything. St. John's, in theory, shouldn't be able to score, and Marquette going to be motivated here. Obviously, St. John's is a solid defensive team. It doesn't go either way, but I think in the revenge angle here, with St. John's already locked up in the big tournament, I think St. John's doesn't try that hard for this game. I think they are kind of want to end up losing just so they don't have to go into the tournament on a big win streak. So give me Marquette +4.5. I think this game's a one-possession game. Heading on to game at number 3 of Kent State versus Miami, Ohio. Miami, Ohio, they're a team due for a ton of regression. They've already beat Kent State twice this year. While I still think Kent is the better team, if you kind of look at the matchups in terms of how these two teams like to score, this is a Miami, Ohio team that shoots a lot of threes. This is a Kent team that's a top 100 3-point defense. Miami, Miami Ohio doesn't really shoot anything else well. They kind of rely on getting points off steals. Still a Kent State team that's a top 100 and limiting points off steals. And on the other side of the ball, Kent State, they're a team that's really good on the offensive glass against a Miami Ohio team that's basically ranked barely in the top 300 in giving up second chance opportunity percentage. They turn the ball over a lot more than Kent does. Kent, not really a fantastic offensive team. It's kind of where they lack. They're kind of similar to St. John's. But I still think they're going to find a little bit of success here just shooting, because Miami Ohio is not a good defense. They only defend the mid-range well. Everything else are outside of the top 200, and so I also think Kent's a much better free throw shooting team if push comes to shove. Miami Ohio is a team that relies much more heavily on home advantage than they do anything else. If you look at the power ratings of these two teams, Kent ended off the season on a much higher note. They ended up going decently well at the end of the year. Miami Ohio also kind of finished on a high note, but I think, again, I don't love to say that it's hard to beat a team 3 times because it's been happening nonstop, but Kent ended the year with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 of their last 12 games they won. Miami Ohio also had a good streak, but they played a lot of dog shit teams to end off the year. We're getting Kent here in a double revenge spot. I do think they are the better team in general. I'm kind of afraid like this is me taking Georgetown like I did against DePaul a few days ago. But I do think Kent's an actually decent team. Who knows? This could be a game where they just get shit on again, and I could just look like an idiot. But again, Miami Ohio's due for so much regression. Kent State is the higher ranked team, in every kind of ranking system. I think they're going to play hard on this game. I think the line's telling us something. The fact that the team that's lost twice in a row to the same team is getting 3.5 is telling us that Kent State is going to jump out for this game. So love Kent State in the spot. Dayton, another team that was on my ban list to start off the year. I think St. Joe's is not that good of a team. They're a very consistent team, but I think Dayton's going to show up. They're going to hit their threes against mediocre three-point defense. They're going to force a bunch of turnovers against St. Joe's. And again, they're a pretty solid three-point defense. They're pretty solid on their own boards. They don't turn the ball over. Dayton's a much better free throw shooting team. Push comes to shove at the end of the game. These teams are kind of fighting for who's going to win. Furthermore, if you kind of look into the power ratings here, Dayton's a much better road team. They're a top 25 neutral rating team, top 80 away team. St. Joseph's also a really good road team, but they're not nearly as good on the neutral court. Dayton's played a harder schedule in the year. They finished off on a really high note, finishing in the top 75, 4 wins in a row, with some big wins over VCU, St. Louis, Rhode Island, Duquesne. Like pretty solid, impressive wins. Meanwhile, St. Joseph's, they just had a really, really close game against LaSalle. They barely beat. They also finished off on a high note, but they played arguably much worse teams, in my opinion. Last time these two teams played, St. Joseph lost to Dayton by 5. You could argue that this is a revenge spot for them, but I also think Dayton is just the better team, and they're gonna show up for this game with a ton more rest after this St. Joseph's team just played a pretty grueling game where they almost lost to LaSalle outright. So if you look a little bit more into the rest stats, with no rest, St. Joe's 0-2 against the spread. With rest advantage, Dayton is 4-3 against the spread. I think they show up for this game. Dayton really knows how to show up when they need to. They're 4-1 against the spread against ranked opponents. Obviously, St. Joseph's not a ranked team, but to me that just shows that Dayton has another level to them when they do try and play really well. So give me Dayton in that game. And to finish this off, sorry for all the rambling. I think Seattle matches up really great. I think Utah Valley due for a ton of negative regression. Seattle due for a ton of positive regression, which is why I think we're getting a decent price here. Almost a pick 'em between these two teams, despite the fact that Utah Valley is 24-7 and Seattle is 14-7. Only catching 2.5 points. I think that's a big tell that Seattle is much better than they suggest. If you look at how Seattle plays, Utah Valley obviously an elite defense, but I think the Seattle team is going to get to line a decent amount. They're going to get some decent success on the offensive boards. But on the other side, this Utah Valley team, I think they're going to struggle here against the Seattle team that does not turn the ball over. They don't give up offensive boards, and they're just on paper. Both these teams are not going to find any success. They're both terrible offensively. But Seattle is just a slightly better free throw shooting team. And the team that's due for regression has played a significantly harder schedule than Utah Valley. So I think they show up to this game. I think it's going to be right down to the wire. They have a slightly deeper team than Utah Valley. If both teams start getting into foul trouble, it's going to be a disgusting game to watch. I'm going to be honest. It's just going to be free throws. That's it. It's going to be disgusting. But I think Seattle can keep this game within 1 or 2 points, if not win it outright. But yeah, those are the 10 games that I've bet. George Washington plus 2.5, East Carolina plus 4.5, and Boise State money line are my 3 leans. Games that I might end up betting. I had East Carolina in my top 11, but I dropped to top 10. I'm a little bit scared of UAB. They're kind of scary. Their logo just kind of intimidates me a little bit. George Washington, again, I think Mason is the better team on paper, but I think George Washington can get them here. And Boise, I think they win this tournament. On paper, if you look at like statistical graphs, Boise is one of those teams that has the ability to stick around with anyone if they play their best of their ability. Coming off a really awesome win against a team that shit on them twice in a row. So I think they're going to ride that momentum into the night here against, arguably a team that is better than them in New Mexico, but I think Boise shows up here and shits on them. So yeah, those are the 10 games. If you have any questions or want any opinions on any games, let me know down below in the comments. This video is kind of going up late. But I've just been kind of getting over a sickness, so excuse me if my voice has been a little bit stuffy, but hopefully I get over that soon. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys all tomorrow.